Dr. Phillips is currently Professor of Psychology and Associated Faculty in the Public Policy Institute at Georgetown University. She is also co-director of the university's Research Center on Children in the U.S. Prior to this, she was the first executive director of the Board of Children, Youth, and Families of the National Research Council's Commission on Social and Behavioral Sciences and the Institute of Medicine. She co-edited From Neurons to Neighborhoods, The Science of Early Child Development, and is now a member of two organizations that were created to continue the work of Neurons to Neighborhoods: the National Scientific Council on the Developing Child and the Forum on Early Childhood Program Evaluation, based at Harvard University. Her research focuses on the developmental effects of early childhood programs, including both child care and pre-K settings. Current studies are focusing on how children who vary in temperament are differentially affected by child care experiences, and on an evaluation of the Tulsa, Oklahoma pre-K program as it affects both cognitive and social emotional development. Dr. Phillips has also served on numerous task forces and advisory groups.
Thank you very much. Those were wonderful, supportive opening statements. Thank you so much. And I'm really delighted to be here this morning to talk with you about this topic that I've been studying for 35 years and is very near and dear to my heart as well as to yours. In my written testimony, I have 3 sections where I talk about brain development, trajectories of early achievement, and investments that work. But in my spoken comments, I'm going to really focus on brain development and early education, and focusing on what we didn't know or know very firmly when I last testified for you 7 years ago. With regard to early brain development, brains are built over time. Neural circuits are wired in a bottom-up sequence with simple circuits and skills, providing the scaffolding for more advanced circuits and skills. And the capacity for change decreases with age. From the moment that we're conceived, our brains greedily recruit information from their surrounding environment, like a sponge, to shape their underlying architecture and neurochemistry. But like a sponge, they are not at all discriminating about what they soak up. If what surrounds them is toxic, prenatal alcohol exposure, child abuse, maternal depression, so on, they will soak this up. If that environment is responsive and stimulating, the brain will absorb this. And no mistake about it, these two brains will look and respond very differently. This is not a random process. Brain circuits that process basic information, like differentiating the sounds of your native language, are wired earlier than those that process more complex information, like learning to read and to write. Once a circuit is up and operating, it participates in the construction of later developing circuits. A sturdy early foundation leads to a well-functioning, efficient brain. A weak early foundation leads to a fragile, over- or under-reactive neural system. The developing chemistry of the brain also matters greatly. During the infancy, toddler, and preschool years, the brain's stress response system gets calibrated, just like you calibrate the thermostat for your home heating system. Under most circumstances, these systems learn to ramp up very quickly in response to threat, and then to ramp back down and return to baseline levels of functioning when the threat has passed. But under conditions of what we have come to call toxic stress, the architecture and chemistry of the developing brain are disrupted. Not only does the stress system get activated at a lower threshold of stress, in effect, a kitten becomes a tiger, but it has a much harder time calming back down to baseline levels of functioning. What we see in the short term are children who are highly reactive to stressful events, who have trouble reading social cues, and who interpret social interactions that are otherwise innocent, like a bump in the hallway, in suspicious ways, like a taunt. And they have substantial learning and memory difficulties. In the longer term, we see greater susceptibility to physical illness and mental health problems. This is all quite recent work. What is very new and relevant to today's hearing is that child care experiences, especially during the toddler years, appear to affect this developing stress response system. I'm going to jump ahead to early investments in the interest of time. The question of whether we can intervene successfully to foster early learning of both cognitive and social skills has been answered in the affirmative and should be put to rest. Evidence from the small, model, tightly controlled abecedarian and preschool programs that I'm sure you know well have been widely cited. It tells us, importantly, what is possible. But this evidence begs the question of whether and how more typical early childhood environments affect important developmental outcomes. Can the levers that can reasonably be pulled by public policy make a meaningful difference in the life chances of young children across the nation? Absolutely. This goes to what is feasible and effective. Significant variations in the quality of more typical early care and education programs have the potential to produce lasting repercussions for both children and society as a whole. Evidence repeatedly points to beneficial impacts at the highest end of the quality spectrum and to detrimental impacts at the lowest end. Very recent evidence from research on typical childcare settings has linked the healthy or unhealthy development of the stress response system in toddlers and young preschoolers to the amount of attention and stimulation they receive from their childcare provider, to the nature of the peer interactions they encounter in childcare, and to child-adult ratios. Combined with children's extensive exposure to childcare in the United States, typically starting around 4 months of age, developmental and neuroscientists alike approach childcare as a massive, sustained intervention in the lives of young children. The U.S. military has figured this out and has supported extensive ongoing training and accreditation of all of its childcare programs as pivotal to military preparedness and ensuring a next generation of effective soldiers. Pre-kindergarten programs represent another form of increasingly typical early childhood education programming. I've been involved in a 5-year-long evaluation of the Tulsa pre-K program, which is universal. 70% of 4-year-olds in Oklahoma and in Tulsa go to this program. In brief, 3 findings that are important to you, and then I'll stop if that's all right with you.
Thank you.
First, students who participated in this Tulsa pre-K program experienced an 8-month gain in their letter word identification scores, an 8-month gain in their spelling scores, and a 5-month gain in their applied problems or pre-math skills. Head Start Tulsa Public Schools contracts with Head Start. Head Start has to comply with all of the same quality standards. The children in Head Start experience a 5-month gain in pre-writing skills, a 3-month gain a 5-month gain in pre-reading, a 3-month gain in pre-writing, a 5-month gain, just like the public school kids, in pre-math. These gains place Tulsa Head Start programs on a par with other state pre-K programs that have been evaluated. Why? We can't say for sure, but they all employ BA-level early childhood credentials teachers who are paid at the same wages as the elementary and secondary teachers in Tulsa.